Hi, I'm Pat Hanahoe-Dosch, your professor, and I wanted to take some time here to go over your first essay assignment instructions. You can find these here in the Dropbox. I also put these instructions in the learning modules. So you can see when you first look at the instructions that I've listed the objectives, and it's important to look at those. I'm not going to take the time to go through and read them, but they are important. They match up with the objectives of the entire course, and they are about what the whole purpose of doing this assignment is. We are trying to get you to learn certain specific skills like critical reading, critical writing, critical thinking, analysis, argumentation, and so on, and using sources, support, and so on. So that's what the point of doing these essays is. If you look down, it tells you that this paper must be at least 3 full pages, though some of you will need to write more than that. If you're ambitious, that's great, but don't go over 6 pages. In fact, if you go over 5 pages, your thesis is too broad, too vague probably, and you should narrow it down. But you must have at least 3 full pages. Don't give me 2 1/2, 2 3/4, 2 2/3. It must be 3 full pages and at least 5 paragraphs, though most of you will probably write more than that. As you know from looking back at some of the things that I put in your learning modules, there's no such thing as a 5-paragraph essay. That was a construction that we gave you in high school to help you learn structure and so on. But the truth is, most of your college essays will be much more than 5 paragraphs. But you have to have at least 5 paragraphs. So that's really important. If you don't meet those requirements, you will fail the assignment for not meeting the parameters of the assignment, no matter how good your essay is. If you look in the important folder under in the content module, it says important. You'll see there's a document labeled general grading standards, I believe. Make sure you look at that because it's a type of rubric. It gives you the general guidelines of what I expect for each grade, an A, a B, a C, a D, and an F. And one of those things that will end up giving you an F is if you don't meet the parameters of the assignment. All right. Also, make sure that it's done in normal 11 or 12 point font at Times New Roman or Arial with normal margins. MLA style norms, which I believe is like 1, 1.5, I forget. Your tab should be set that way anyway, normally. Okay. Make sure, if you scroll down in the instructions, you'll see it gives you a section here that says instructions. Write an organized, fully developed essay based on one of the following topics. You must write about one of these topics. Don't go off and write about one of your own. Okay. Number 1, you must have a thesis, of course, and support your points with specific examples if possible. Also, use quotes, paraphrases, or summaries from the article or essay you're analyzing. 2, you must have at least 1 quote from it somewhere in your essay, but you will probably need more to support your points. Quotes are probably one of the most important ways in which we support our points when we are analyzing something. Right? But you may also paraphrase and summarize. Just make sure that you do it correctly. Remember, if you paraphrase or summarize, it must be completely in your own words. Okay? You cannot just use the author's words or sentence structure in a paraphrase or summary. Okay, your thesis must be an argumentative or analysis one. You are writing an analysis paper. An analysis is a type of argument, okay, but it is a specific kind. Okay, you are breaking down the article and discussing its strengths, its weaknesses, what the author is doing, why, how, and so on. Okay, make sure you're doing that. Make sure you're analyzing the article, not arguing the topic. Okay. 4, you must also use at least 1 other source, an article, not a book, an article from the Hack Library's databases to support your points. And I have put a link to the Hack Library, specifically to its databases, in at least one of the learning modules, but also in the helpful links section. But you can also access them through your My Hawk page before you enter the D2L course. You must also cite those quotes, paraphrases, or summaries correctly using the MLA documentation style. To go back here, make sure that you use an article from the Hacker Library's databases. Now, you may use something else. You may also use a book or some other kind of article or source from one of the databases, but you must also have that one article from the database too. Part of the purpose here is to get you to use the databases and to learn how useful they are and helpful. Number 5, again, so cite everything correctly using the MLA 8th edition documentation style, the newest style. Be careful because there are a lot of things out there, even within the databases, that give you the citations for something using the old style. So be careful. Be careful too that you're not using APA. I know a lot of other classes you will use APA, but in the language and humanities classes, and sometimes even business classes, you use MLA. Number 6, include a copy of the article from the database somewhere in their paper, at the end of your paper. All right, at the end of the paper, paste it in at the bottom after your works cited list. You can also upload it as a separate attachment in the Dropbox. However, sometimes that's a little bit difficult for me to see, but I realize depending on the source, sometimes it's easier for you to do that rather than to just include it as an sorry, I wandered off there. Sometimes it's easier for you to include it as an attachment in the Dropbox than pasting it into the bottom. It depends on the type of source that you find. So it's up to you, but make sure that it's there so I can access it and look at it if I need to, rather than having to hunt it down. Okay, note also that Wikipedia is not a valid academic resource. I know that's controversial. Some teachers will accept it. I don't. I think it's too easy to mess up in Wikipedia. They've gotten better about checking their sources and so on, but sometimes wrong information gets put in there, sometimes deliberately, sometimes as a joke, whatever. People sometimes put wrong information in there, and it will take at least several days, sometimes longer, for them to find it and to realize that and to take it down. So be careful. Don't use Wikipedia. Actually, don't use any internet source for this particular paper. Your later papers, you'll be able to, but for this one, I want you to focus on the databases from our library. I want you to get used to using them because they're a wonderful resource and actually more reliable, more credible, and easier to use than the internet. Right, then there are the topics here. I don't want to waste a lot of time going through and reading them out loud for you, but please be very careful and look at the language, look at what I'm asking you to do. In number 1, if I'm asking you to disagree with the author about the specific topic, about whether or not you think execution should be made public. I'm not asking you to argue about executions in general or capital punishment in general, just about whether or not they should be made public. If you agree with him, it's probably not the essay. This is not the topic for you. I want you to disagree because it's easier to do an analysis and argument through there that way, because I want you to basically work on refuting points. That's part of what the purpose of that topic is. Number 2, again, you're evaluating the essay, the Pledge of Allegiance. Really look at the question, that number 14 on page, I forget, 87 or something, and follow what it asks of you there. Okay, that's the topic. You're analyzing, not arguing the topic. Again, remember, you're analyzing and evaluating the essay. 3 and 4, I've attached editorials and an op-ed article. An editorial is an article written by a bunch of editors from a newspaper or magazine. It's unsigned. It doesn't have an author listed because the author is theoretically the newspaper or magazine itself, though it's really the editors who wrote it, and it was done usually as a collaborative effort, not always. The op-ed articles are usually written by a specific author. They will have a name. They are published in the opinion section of a newspaper, okay, which usually has 2 pages. The first page is the editorial section with editorials and letters to the editor. The second page, opposite it, is the op-ed page, and that's why they call it op-ed. It's the opposite of from the editorials. And within there, you'll find columns, articles by guest editors, and so on and so forth, and they will almost always have names attached to them. Please note that an actual editorial, is cited differently from other articles from a newspaper. So make sure you look it up. Look up how to cite an editorial from a newspaper. Okay? It's not a lot different, but it is a little bit different. So be careful. All right, and then I have a checklist here at the end. Go through and follow that checklist. I also put a checklist in the learning module. All right, it's the same checklist, but in a separate thing. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to turn that in. It's for you. So make sure you go through and look at every item that in there that I've requested and make sure that you've done it. Because remember, if you did not follow directions, you could fail for not meeting the parameters of the assignment. So it's important that you follow the instructions carefully. I know you can do this. Okay, this first essay is always a little bit challenging because you're not quite sure what I want and so on. I get that. But read it through carefully, take your time, work hard at it, and I know you're going to be successful. Good luck, and if you have any questions, please make sure you ask. Okay, that's what I'm here for. I'm here to help you. And so is smartthinking.com, our tutoring service, and the tutors we have in the Learning Commons on each campus. All right, have a good day.